Today we are talking about like media, so like wrangling media in your house. And I know it's generally a hot button for a lot of Waldorf families, so I thought we would go ahead and talk about that today, especially sort of as we're going into the holidays. And for our Northern Hemisphere families, you're going into sort of this colder time, so you're in the house more together. And for our Southern Hemisphere families, maybe you're in a place where it's really hot, and so you're in the house more together, which often tends to happen. Like, you know, if you're in the house because it's too hot outside, or you're in the house because it's too cold outside, then that's often when media starts to rear its ugly head. Another time is like if we're sick, and you know, as mom, if we just feel like, oh my gosh, you just can't get off the couch, which could happen because, you know, maybe you're battling a virus, or maybe you're battling a longer term illness, or maybe you're pregnant, or, you know, so many reasons why. So I thought we would talk about that. And also sort of as we go into the holidays, often we have, you know, well-meaning family members that are like, oh, you mean you can't watch this, or let's just turn the TV on, or, you know, because it's for many people, that kind of becomes background noise, and so they have it on all the time. And like, for instance, I love my in-laws dearly, but, you know, when we go into their house, it's always on, always on. And Erik would say that that's how they ate dinner, with it always on. And that was not my reality growing up. And so it's not my children's reality. It is very rare that they watch anything while eating. Like during family movie night, maybe we'll bring our food into the living room while our movie's on, but it's definitely not something that's happening on a regular basis. So I think it's important to sort of have these conversations and sort of arm yourself, you know, for a couple of different situations as you're moving into this time of the year when the TV tends to be on more. And then also, I think if you have older children, sort of how to lay boundaries and how to help them understand, and how to decide for yourself what's okay for you and what's not. So let's start first with sickness and when you've got young children at home. One thing that I think is really important is if you don't start with TV being your default, then it won't be your default. Now, if you're in a spot where you're like, but I did start with TV being my default, what do I do now? Then you would just back it off. You know, sometimes it's great to go cold turkey. And I do want to back up for a moment. I'm talking about all media, because I have families that say to me, oh, but Melissa, it's not a big deal for me because I don't have a TV. But your kid's on the flippin' iPad all the time. No. They're still media. So I'm not just talking about the actual television set. I'm talking about media in general, whether it be consumed, like all media consumption, whether it be consumed on an Xbox, a PlayStation, an iPad, a tablet, a phone, you know, a Kindle, all of those things. I'm talking about all media in general. I'm not just talking about the television that we all grew up with. Because there are many families that actually don't have a television set, but they consume much more media than families with a TV. There are many families that don't also. So if that's your reality, and you know, you guys have media under control, that's awesome. Help your friends that are struggling without judgment, because that's kind of the place that I'm trying to come from, is not a place of judgment. I'm coming from a place of, I've been there, I've walked it. You know, I have 5 children. I had a stroke 5 years ago. You know, again, I had 5 children, so that means I was pregnant many times, you know, exhausted, all of those things that I know many moms are struggling with every day. So if you are in a spot where you can have media be very much on the lowdown from the get-go, that's fantastic, especially for those early years. Anything that a child sees in a device or on a television set through media before the age of 6, they believe is real. It doesn't matter if it's a cartoon. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, a video game that looks like a, you know, pixeled game. It does not matter what it is. It's a sense impression, and it goes into their being, and they feel it in their being. I would definitely say especially before 4. So, but for sure, before 6. That's why you have children that are like, is this real? When they're 6 and 7. And sometimes even when they're 8. So Soraya is 8.5, and there will still be times when she will ask, is this real? She doesn't ask that about cartoony kinds of things anymore because she's made that shift in her head out of that Eden space and into the world space, which is what they do in that 6-7 year change. But there are many times that you're going to have that, have that question when they're young. So you want to be really careful what they, what they have access to and what they're seeing. I would say sort of a funny thing on our end, and this wasn't media at all, but we have Disneyland passes. That's no secret. So we've been going since she was probably 4. And if you've been there, there's a train ride that goes around the park, and there's a part where it goes through this tunnel, and it goes through like different times in history. And one of them has dinosaurs that are really big dinosaurs, animatronic dinosaurs. And like for a year, she was really glad that those doors to the train closed every night because she was afraid the dinosaurs were going to get out. So like she was really concerned about that, and she was concerned about everything around her being real. And I instead of saying, no, it's not real, because I think that often confuses them unless you're in a spot where you have to say that, I would say, don't worry. They close the doors every night, and they can't get out. It's not a big deal. So, but I do want you to realize that everything that comes to them when they're young like that is a sense impression. So that means they're taking it in. So if you're going to allow media, for a young child, which I am going to recommend that you don't, but if you're going to allow media for a young child, you should keep it in the realm of this is something that's real. I can remember when Samuel was really little, one of the things that we allowed to be on with the bigger kids around was, what was that show called? The one about the dogs. It was The Dog Whisperer. The Dog Whisperer. Oh, yeah. Because that was real. And, he could meet Caesar Milan. He could understand that there were people that needed help with their dogs. And so then, he would say, tss, he would like try to quiet people that way. But he would also see that dogs that were misbehaving needed somebody to help them. So if you're going to do any kind of media for a young child, and again, I recommend none, but if there's going to be any media around for a young child, it should be in the realm of people and opportunities that it is okay for them to imitate. Okay, I have a message over here. That's a really good reminder. I'm a pumping mom and will often have the TV on in the background while I'm pumping. I have an 8-month-old. Yeah, I would say you want to be aware that even when they're really little, they're taking it all in. So,
well, it's like the theater has those screenings, so people, that the baby-friendly screening.
Oh, that stresses me out.
They had one for the Joker.
Yeah, that's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad when parents do that. And I know that there are moms that would say to me, and there are moms, angry moms that have said to me, listen, that's the only way I get a date. And I go, shame on you. Shame on you. Do not take your infant or your toddler or your 3-year-old to a movie like that. Like Erik and I love going to the movies, but nothing stresses me out more than going, he and I, to a movie that we're not even, like we're previewing to whether or not Samuel can see it. Like I was thinking about Man of Steel when we went to see that. Batman versus Superman. He's correcting me because he's right. Batman versus Superman. Intense movie that I wanted to see. And there was this tiny little 4-year-old in the room. And there's a part in the movie where Superman dies. And there's a part in the movie where Batman's having this horrible nightmare. And you could hear the little boy in the background just sad. And we left the movie theater, and I'm feeling for this little boy is still whimpering. And his dad, he turns to his dad and asks to be carried, and his dad tells him to man up. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it hurts my heart. But that is the default for so many people. So the best thing you could do as a Waldorf parent, or as a parent that's trying to live this life, if you have people in your life like that, don't be judgmental, observe, and just say, he's really scared. Did you realize that everything under 6 is a sense impression? And he believes right now that Superman really did die. And he believes right now that when he goes to sleep tonight, he's going to have nightmares like Batman. Hope he's okay sleeping in your bed. That's always been our thing. I don't want extra kids in my bed. We did the family bed. We've graduated from the family bed. All of our kids are older. I don't really need kids in my bed. No, thank you. They all have limbs going everywhere now. So I don't need kids in my bed. So we are really careful about what they see. Really careful about what they see. Even Sam, who is 13 and he thinks he's going on 30, there are things that I'm like, no, that's all right. You don't need to, that's not an impression I want in your mind. And then I think as adults too, we have to remember that what we see before we go to bed, that's what we're taking into our sleep with us. So if you're watching something, scary or stressful or divisive before you go to bed, that's what you're taking into sleep with you. So, years ago, because I was pre-law student years ago, was on that path. I loved Law and Order like crazy. Like, did you know that you could watch Law and Order like 3 times a day, every day of the year and still not get through all the episodes? Did you know that? Like, there are so many seasons of Law and Order, and then there's SVU, and then there's Criminal Intent, and then there's all these things. Did you know that? So here's the deal. I had to just decide I didn't want that in my head. Not saying it's not a good show. There are plenty of really awesome shows out there that don't have any place to be in my head, especially before I go to bed. So you should think about that. Think about what you're taking in, and especially if you're nursing a young one at night. Because if you're taking that in to your head and you're in that mental space, guess what? Guess what? That's what's flowing out of you, energetically flowing out of you. So be really careful about what you're taking in. But back to children and media. So if you have a media issue in your home, I would say there are 2 options. Of course, you can go cold turkey, which works often, but it will be really hellish for a couple of days, or just start backing it off. One thing that we did when our older kids still visited my ex-husband years ago, because they would have all the media they wanted when they went there, and then we felt like we could have like none. So we had to make sure that when we were sort of going through that space, we had to make sure that we had enough things scheduled so that it wasn't about like, hey, can I go watch TV? And that didn't mean we were overscheduled, but it did mean that we kept them busy. So we were on family walks a lot, and we did family things together. We played board games together. We did things that knitted us together as a family so that it wasn't about the TV. It wasn't about, hey, can I go watch? So that's one thing I would say. If you're wanting to go cold turkey or even just cutting back, that's fantastic, but have a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have like them asking you every 5 minutes when the TV can come on. And then you're going to cave and be like, fine, go watch it. And if you don't want to be in that space of fine, go watch it, and then be mad at yourself for not having any resolve, then you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. And I would have a good plan for about a week or so. And then after that, you don't have to have as much of a plan, but have a good plan for about a week that you're doing something. Maybe you're baking together every afternoon when you know they're going to want to turn the TV on. Or maybe you're doing a read aloud, which that was a great way for us to not have the TV when my big kids were little. We read the Chronicles of Narnia, and that took us a long time. And there was like, and it totally kept their attention away from that, and we were into the book. So find a good read aloud that you can read to everybody, and do things, play board games together. Definitely dive into something that knits you all together and brings you all together, rather than this space of disconnection, which is what media does. It disconnects us from each other. As soon as you get out your phone, you're disconnected from everybody around you. As soon as you sit down and you get into a show, you're disconnected from everybody around you. So you really have to examine that. You have to examine, how do I want to show up? And when you decide how you want to show up, then everything you do sort of has to support that, or you don't really want to show up that way. It's like, I'm calling BS on that one. If you say this is what you want to do, but you don't actually do the planning, then you don't really want to show up that way. So you have to decide, how do I want to show up? And if you want to show up centered and present, then you have to do the actions that go with that. And doing the actions that go with that really mean that you have to make a plan and decide. You cannot tell dad, no, you can't watch any TV, without giving him some things to help him with that. often moms are holding the space all day, so we kind of know, hey, Johnny likes this and Susie likes that, and so it's easy for us to sort of like move things around, but it's not so easy for dad who's gone from them often. Most dads are gone all day long, and so they're like in this reintegration space and trying to sort it all out. So the default for them is, hey, let's watch a YouTube video. And I'm not saying that's a bad 100% of the time, depending on what he's got on the YouTube video. And I would just say, if you need to suggest something to dad, I would suggest like the Brave Wilderness YouTube channel, which is all about animals, things like that. If he needs a buffer or transition, bring something in that is not so objectionable, that it's not, watching Marvel on your phone kind of thing. So bring something in that feels good, or at least feels better. And also give him ideas. Say, hey, I'm going to be gone for 3 hours. I set out these board games for you. The kids are really excited to play Monopoly with you. Said no parent ever said, yay, I'm so excited for that. But kids love Monopoly, and it could absolutely last for 3 hours. So, get board games out, have dinner prepared and ready so that he's not trying to juggle too many things. And yes, he should be able to do this because they are his children, but you got to teach him. You have to show him, and you have to sort of have expectations that are appropriate and that are fair. If his default is always TV, then you've got to help him have it not be his default. And you got to talk to him in a non-accusing way, in a non-judgmental way, in more of a space of, hey, I'd really, really like to cut back on how much TV they're watching. And he'll probably say, great, turn it off during the day. So you say, no, and I really want to cut down on how much they're watching even with you. Now, I do want to say there are some major sports fanatics, and so there are dads that like to share that with their kids. So this is what I would say, and this is what we've counseled families in the past. I would say, Dad, yes, I'm there for you. You want to see your team. This is a culture you're creating with the children. Yes, but here's the deal. I need you to get me the game schedule, and we're going to put it on the calendar. So then you're ahead of it. You know when the games are coming out. You've got the calendar in front of you. So if he's like, it's Tuesday night and there's not a game on, and he's like hunting for the TV, and you go, hey, remember? It was Monday night football and Sunday football. But today's Tuesday. Let's play a family board game. And be in a space of give and take so that it does not become a fight. If you have a dad that's a gamer, I got a dad that's a gamer. And so you just have to talk about what's appropriate. And that's an okay space to be. So that means that dad comes home from work and he wants to play video games. Then you go, great, here's the controller for Mario Kart. I'll take your controller for Call of Duty and you can play that after they go to bed. But right now, you're going to play Mario Kart with your kids. Or let's go for a walk, or let's do something else. I'm bringing up a lot of scenarios because this is a lot of what we see. Erik and I are also marriage and family coaches. And so we see these sorts of issues coming up a lot. And so we really want to sort of help you have tools together to help you really be able to not have that be angst in your home. So it's about really making a plan, though, and really deciding, hey, this is how we want to show up as parents. This is what we want for our children, because it is about the kids. It is about the kids. We live in a time when media consumption is everywhere. It's everywhere. You can't even go to the flippin' Target today and try to do your shopping without there being a TV on the end cap trying to sell you something. Bully for them for using the TV in that way, right? But you're trying to eliminate media where possible. And I'm not saying that it should be gone completely. I'm definitely saying that you should be mindful of it. So then the question comes, when is it okay? When is it okay to start allowing some things? And that's going to be different for each family. It's going to be different for depending on each family's sort of ecosystem and what they do. If you're an outdoors family, then it might never be a problem. If you love camping and hiking and that's what you guys are doing all the time, then it might never be a problem. But that's not everybody's reality or everybody's desire. So you might have family that it's a real sports family, and so they really are in watching sports sometimes. Or you might have a family that is definitely more geared toward they love to watch movies together. So you want to sort of not judge others, but sort of ask yourself, okay, so what kind of family are we? And how does that play out in sort of what we're doing every day and how we show up? So once you've decided that, then you can sort of alter your media accordingly. So, we have a rule at home that the media is allowed on Tuesdays and Thursdays after 4. That's it. And sometimes on Sundays. And I account, all media counts for the same. So you can't say, oh, but all I did was watch TV and I really want to play a video game. Well, you had a choice. This is your media time, and it goes from like 4 to 6. It's not hours and hours, because I also have a rule of there's no media within an hour of bedtime. I don't want you taking things into sleep that are going to be troublesome for you for the reasons that we talked about earlier in this video. So I am really careful about what they watch. Of course, occasionally there's going to be a late night movie, or they're going to go to a movie with a friend or be out later. There's always that exception for sure. But on the whole, this is our daily plan. And it works really well, because then they're not asking me every day. They know, oh, it's not Tuesday. Oh, it's not Thursday. And so they know that there are things that have to be done. They know that chores have to be done and schoolwork has to be done before they can even ask. And it's not a given. There have been times that it's a Tuesday or a Thursday and we're off doing something like this week. We're going to be gone. What the hell's to the no? The TV is not coming on. It doesn't mean that it's 4 o'clock. Hey, but we're in the car driving somewhere cool. Nope, sorry, you don't get any media. Just how it is, because we're doing something else. So you definitely want to plan and schedule things around that so that you can reduce that media. And also take into account what your kids like. Okay? That you really have to go, okay, well, what makes you so excited about Adventure Time? Adventure Time was something that Sam and Dad started watching when Sam was about 10. And it's silly and it's goofy. And I had to just go, you know what? They're having a good time. And I'm okay with that. And he's older. He's not 6. He was 10 at the time. He was older. So I have a question here. Do you have any suggestions for things to do with a 4, 3, and 2-year-old to transition, especially while putting the baby down or nursing? Well, I really, really, really like Sparkle Stories, like a lot. We use Sparkle Stories. That's like the best $15 I spend a month. And I know you don't have to, I think they have other plans, but we have access to their entire library for $15 a month. And there's like 1,100 stories. So, and they're all put together by age. So for your age group, I would say the Libby and Dish stories are really good. The Martin and Sylvia stories are really good. And those would be something that I would have them listen to while you're trying to put the baby down. And I know that can be like a struggling thing, because I've totally been there. I totally got your back. I understand that it's hard. But you know what? It's even harder pulling them away from the TV, because then you get up and the baby's asleep and you're like, oh, it's quiet. I'm just going to let them watch TV for another hour because it's quiet. And we fall into that trap. Because I love Sparkle Stories. We use them a lot, and it fulfills that. So we have some kids on the spectrum, and children often want to have something going. It fulfills that need to have something else going on in the background. It drives the rest of us crazy, but they often have this need to have something else stimulating their brain. I do not subscribe to the idea that it has to be as many things as some people think that it does. So we keep it very much on the lowdown. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, as they get older. So by about 9, you want to loosen up a little bit. I'm not saying loosen the reins totally. So I feel like we have a very, very healthy relationship with media in our home. Some other people would think we're crazy, but I believe we have a very healthy relationship with it at this time. There have been times that we haven't, but for sure at this time. So we have 8.5 as our youngest right now, and she does watch some movies on occasion. And she watches a couple of TV shows. I am very, very careful about which ones those are. For instance, I talked about Adventure Time. She can't wait to cross that Rubicon of 9 because we're not allowing her to watch it until then. Maybe it was 10. I can't remember which one we put together. Was it 9 or 10, Daddy? I can't remember. was thinking it was 10. So she's looking forward to that. Just because she watches some shows doesn't mean she's watch everything. I would be very wary of children that think that they're ready for something, and then you realize they're not. So be very careful with that. Be very careful with anything like I can remember Sam was probably 8 the first time he watched Scooby-Doo. And I think I've talked about this before. And he if you've not seen Scooby-Doo, there's always a resolve at the end, and it's always something really silly. But for those of you who remember Scooby-Doo, it's scary at first. And you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? This is really a lake monster? What's going to happen? And then it turns out to be some old guy in a suit. And so the first time he watched it, he comes booking out of the family room. He's like, nope, I can't watch that. And I said, okay, we're going to watch this together because I need you to see the resolve. He was 8 years old. It was Scooby-Doo. We sat together and I said, it's okay. Remember, I wouldn't steer you down the wrong path. But if I had steered him down the wrong path before, do you think he would trust me? Nope. So I'm really careful about what it is that they see and what they do. Yes, Daddy.
Becca Joy says, we are in this space where mom and dad are working opposite shifts and both using media to try to keep kids occupied so the parent on duty can do chores or so the parent off duty can sleep in advance of the next shift. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, so I'm going to say something that's really hard. It's probably going to make some people mad at me. Your kids didn't ask to be in that situation. So you got to find other ways. And with regards to doing chores, your kids should be doing chores with you, even when they're 2 and 3 and 4. They should be doing chores with you. Come on, we're all going to wash the dishes together. Come on, we're all going to unload the dishwasher together. Come on, we're all going to sweep the floor together. You should be doing things with them that they didn't ask to be in that situation. So be very, very careful putting them in it. Very careful. I had a pretty frank conversation with a mom that was here in California at a conference that I did a few years ago. And she said, I work 2 jobs and my husband works 2 jobs and I try to homeschool. And that's just what we have to do to live here in California. And I said, this is going to make you mad at me, but I want you to hear me. Your kids didn't ask to be born in California. Move somewhere else. Move someplace where it's easier for you to not have to have that kind of schedule. There are options. The problem is that we live in this box and the solution is outside the box. And so then there's this fear as we're pushing up against the box because we need the solution. So you have to break the box or realize there's no flipping box and go to the solution. So we have to sort of step out of this limiting belief that that's the only way we can do things. It is a limiting belief. And so getting out of that limiting belief space and realizing, hey, there's something that I can do that's better for us, better for my family, better for my kids. So, because here's the thing, you choose to homeschool them. It's a choice. And so then there are times when you have to ask yourself, is that the best choice for our family right now? If we both have to work all this shift work and we're both, in it, maybe there's a better choice. Maybe if they're at school, then somebody could sleep during the day. And that is as a dyed-in-the-wool homeschooling parent, that is super painful for me to even say. But I know that it's not always the right choice for everybody. Your children did not ask to be in that situation, so you have to figure out ways so that they're not. And maybe that just means cutting down that media, for sure, cutting it back, looking at ways that you can include them in chores, looking at ways that you can be more impeccable with your sleep. Because I also understand there are times as a family where you're going for the sprint. And when you're going for the sprint, man, it's going to be better once you get to the other side, right? So you know that as you're going for the sprint, you are going to have to make some sacrifices. Don't make it with them if you don't have to. Make the sacrifices with your own time. Be impeccable with your own time. Be impeccable with your planning. When you are impeccable with your planning, lessons run smoothly, your house runs smoothly. You don't have these issues of not knowing what you're eating or who's doing what or where you're all going. Be impeccable with your planning so that you know what's happening, so that they know what's happening, and things can flow. Yes.
Danielle Bertoa says, I might have missed your answer here, but what about audiobooks?
I love audiobooks.
I've been trying to listen to audiobooks as a way to wean myself off of background TV noise. Law and Order, SUV, I am
Yes.
wondering about the content of those. Nothing scary, but books on environmental stuff by Joanna Macy, etc. Is that okay?
Not in front of your kids. Nope. Nope, not if they're little, because you don't want them worrying about, like, somebody got Soraya all stressed about Trash Island when she was like 5. And I was like, what the heck? You don't need to worry about Trash Island. Let me worry about Trash Island. That's not your worry right now. You're 5. Be a kid. I am all for teaching kids that the environment is important, and we do. We talk about recycling, we talk about reducing, we talk about reusing. I do not talk to them about global warming. I do not talk to them about Trash Island or anything like that until they're 9. They don't need to be stressed about that. They don't need to be in a stressful place. They need to be in a place of childhood is happy as it can be, because there are a heck of a lot of kids on this planet that they don't have a happy childhood. My kid is not going to be one of them. I have the opportunity to make it that way, so it is. So be very careful with what you're listening to. If you're listening to Sparkle Stories as a way to wean yourself from TV, sure. I would say there are some Sparkle Stories for adults. There's not super adult content. It's like a lot of it's like mythology and things like that. But if you're listening to audios, I make an exception for some things. So my exception is if it's an audio by Dr. Joe Dispenza, or an audio by, some self-help person, or Tony Robbins audio or something like that, then yeah, we're all listening to it. Why? Because we meditate together as a family. We're self-actualized together as a family. This is our life. And so that wouldn't be weird for them to hear at all. Some people listen to me while they're weaning themselves off TV. Not saying that I think you should do that. Just saying, yeah. Let's move into when is an appropriate time to sort of have more, and what do you do when you've got teenagers that are like, hey, I'm 15, right? So I want to say, first, like I said, be really careful with anything before 9. And I'm gonna, when I say be really careful, I'm gonna bring something up here too. So Soraya loves Godzilla, and if you follow us, you're like, okay, so how you can reconciling that? She watches the old stuff, and every now and again we'll let her watch parts of some new things, but it's about a specific genre. It's not about all the other. We're very careful about things.
I make sure it's not one where he dies at the end.
Oh, yes.
And that he's a good guy, because sometimes he's a bad guy and sometimes he's a good guy.
So we're very careful about that. So again, but she's 8.5. So as they get older, 9, 10, 11, you want to give them some wings. One way that I've done that, since Sam was about 10, he started watching. Like I said, he and Dad watched Adventure Time together when Soraya wasn't around. So either after she went to bed at night, or when she and I were gone somewhere, it became their treat. They're something that they were doing together. And then, now that Sam is older, he's almost 13 and a half. For the last year or two, he and I have been watching something a couple of nights a week, just he and I. Again, not super deep. Not super deep, because I don't want to take scary stuff into my sleep with me. We have recycled the psych seasons over and over again. Some of my favorites, because while there's stuff that happens and it's mystery, it's usually funny, has a good resolve. So we're careful with what we're doing at night before bed. Like I said, he's 13 and a half now. He can go to most movies without us pre-screening them. Not all of them, but most of them. And definitely I go to Common Sense Media and look at the Parents Guide on everything, on books, on movies, on audiobooks, all the things. Common Sense Media, look it up. Also, the IMDb often has a parent's guide, a parent's review. imdb.com or .org.
Be wary of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
Yes, be wary of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. It's a little scarier and a little deeper than we thought it was going to be. So as they're older, 13 and up, they're going to be asking, because maybe they've got peer friends that are watching more TV. So I always say, well, let's look at what what's going on in their house, because if they're watching a lot of TV in general, that's just kind of not how we are. What is it that you want to watch? And let Dad and I talk about it. And, it might be like right now, Stranger Things is really big. And it goes into that dark place. So we loved Stranger Things. It's on season 3 now, right? So, but I didn't finish season 3 yet. I'm sure Dad will finish season 3, because I decided I didn't want to take that into my brain anymore. And so you're going to come to places like that where you're going to make personal decisions. And then you have to trust that you raised your children right, and that you and your husband have enough trust that you can say, I'm not going to do that anymore, and step away and allow them to make decisions that are okay, and then don't judge them for that, especially as they're getting older. Now, when I was a teenager, we watched the Freddy movies and the Nightmare on Elm Street and all of the, and the Jason movies, all of the scary 80s movies. I watched all of those. Did it hinder me? I don't think so. Did it help me? Probably not. So, of course there's this space of kids that when they get to that teenager space, they want to see some scary stuff. And Erik is like the scary movie dad. So he'll take the older teens and the adult kids to see things like It. I ain't going to that. Nope, no thank you. And it's not that I have a problem with horror. It's that I don't want those images in my mind, because I want to vibrate at a higher place, and I want to be in an open place. And I can't do that when I'm taking on the angst of what's going on the screen. So you really want to think about that. You really want to think about sort of where you're going and what that next space is for you, and what you want to what example you want to set for your kids. And I'm not saying don't ever let them watch this or ever let them watch that, but talk about it. Talk about it. Gosh, those are conversations. I love my mom dearly, but she never had those conversations with me. We never talked about, hey, maybe Children of the Corn's not the best show. We never had those conversations. The Serpent and the Rainbow, maybe not the best show for you. And so I'm having those conversations, because I think it's really important to really be able to, help your kids be able to make those decisions. Yes.
Rhiannon says, we have found, since we have raised them to think about what is good for them, that they now stop things when they realize it isn't something they want in their brain. Or if they do watch something, they talk with us about
Yep.
it. It's pretty awesome watching that take place.
Yes, it is, because you sort of have already planted that in their soul, and that happens when they're young. So, and it goes to interesting places that you don't expect. Like, Sam hates the Halloween store. Now, he's never been a fan of Halloween. He likes dressing up and all of that, but he's 13 and a half years old. And when he needed something for his costume the other day, Erik said he walked in there and he's like, nope, I'm done. And he turned around and walked back out. Because it's not a space that he wants to be, for a couple of reasons. The Halloween store has the scary, but it also has the completely inappropriate. So he knows at 13 that he's like, that doesn't make me feel good. So we talk about, how does it make you feel? If your stomach's all in knots and you feel like you want to throw up, that's a sign that maybe you should be like, I don't think that's for me. Now, if we're talking about something really simple, like I had a client once ask me, hey, my 14-year-old, 15-year-old son wants to watch Doctor Who. I'm like, have at it. Have a good time. Have a Doctor Who fest once a week, or watch one episode a day, or something like that. When they're older, you've got to teach them how to have good boundaries with electronics and with media. So that boundary starts when they're about 10, 11, 12, and then you have to grow it from there. I know a lot of people don't do smartphones for their kids until they're older. I'm all for that. We have an extra one by default, because we had an extra phone when Ellie moved out and got her own plan. And so we had this extra phone that is a phone that Samuel uses. Is it Samuel's phone? I pay for it. It is not Samuel's phone. So we want to be very careful about what things we sort of set forth for that, and how we are allowing those things. And we want to teach them how to have good boundaries with it. And one of those things, I say, I don't want to see that out of your pocket. I don't want to see your nose buried in it. And if I see your nose buried in it, you better be sending me a text about how much you love me, or taking a picture of something awesome, because I don't want to see your nose buried in it. I want you to have good habits. And good habits start with us talking about them. And it also starts with us realizing that it is the shiny new toy and they're going to want to be at it more, but you should have absolute control over everything until they're grown up and out of your house. I love that Eric's computer tells us anytime Sam gets a text, anytime he's on an app, anytime, everything. I love that. And that has been our open space when it comes to what we allow, because, and it has more to do with, my job is to have stewardship over you. Not to reign over you, but to have stewardship over you. That feels different, right? Control and stewardship are different. Stewardship is, hey, it's my job to raise you in a space where you can be a strong, healthy adult. Hovering is something totally different. But having stewardship means I'm going to allow you to make some of these decisions, but just know, I know what those decisions are. I've got your back and your soul, because it's more than just having your back. I also am dialed into your soul and whether or not you're making good choices that are going to make you feel good and make you have feel like you have a good relationship with the divine. So those are big choices and big things that we have to think about. So you've just got little ones right now. You should think the world is changing. The world is changing. Technology is everywhere. So really start to think now about how you're going to sort of walk through those spaces. We haven't been perfect at it. We have learned a lot. We have gained a lot of wisdom from having older children and this younger set of children. So there's a lot of things that we don't allow now that we allowed before that we didn't know any better. So, be aware and be mindful and have proper boundaries with media for yourself and for your children in your home. So as you go into this holiday season, know that you can say no when there's well-meaning family. Just say, I'm sorry, that's not part of our belief system. Or a better way than making yourself feel weird at a family function is, well, here's a list of 10 shows that I'm okay with them watching. Here's the list. Oh, but we wanted to watch something else. Well, here's my list. Otherwise, we're happy to go for a walk and you can just text me when you're done and we'll come back. It's okay. It doesn't make you a jerk. It means you have a boundary. So have a boundary and know what it is and stick to it and talk to your partner about sticking to it with you. And it's okay to say no to a parent or grandparent or an aunt or uncle, or heaven forbid, somebody you don't know very well. It's absolutely okay to say that I'm not comfortable with that. You don't have to be a jerk about it. Just say, I'm sorry. I'm just not comfortable with that. It's not part of our belief system. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week.